I still remember the first time I did one where someone said, oh, by the way, this won't be edited, it'll be a single take. I'm thinking, oh, don't put that pressure on me.
Oh, this is the same concept.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I was the 18-year-old who bought an Amiga Seamaster GMT after 2 years of working a Saturday and a Sunday job while doing my studies. And I knew I wanted this watch, and I saved up and I bought it. And I bought that watch in 2005, which was a time when watches weren't cool. You know, for an 18-year-old to be obsessed with buying at the time, £1,400 Swiss-made watch, that was a weird, geeky thing for anyone to be obsessed with. And I loved that watch. I wore it for university. I wore it when I got married. I wore it through different jobs when I started at Rolex.
Did you start the watch?
No, well, not this one, sadly, no. So that Amiga, I had to sell it. That watch, along with all my watches I sold when I restarted the family business. So
to fund the business then.
Exactly. So the Amiga was sold to start Fears. While I worked at Rolex, I bought myself my dream Rolex, my Grail watch, which was a white gold day date, and I'd wanted that watch since I was 8 years old. And eventually I was able to be in a position to buy it, and I wore it for 2 years, and I loved it. I wore it all the time because I adored that watch. But along with the Amiga and several other pieces, I say sadly, they all had to be sold because I needed the money to fund the business. But actually, to be able to wear this watch today, a watch that I designed from scratch, that I came up with, and you know, this isn't nothing on this watch except for the movement is standardized. You know, it is literally something I've created. For me, that is. You know, that means a lot. And actually, yes, don't get me wrong, I'd still love to have that day date, but actually this is worth a lot more to me. So today Fears is hand building its watches in the UK. So we say in a lot of our marketing, hand built in Great Britain or hand built in Britain. And I think this is something where it's very much part of the ethos of Fears. So if we go back to when I was restarting the business in 2016, I made a very big point about not glossing over those 40 years when the company lay dormant. It's very easy to just pretend nothing happened and say, oh, we've been going for 174 years. But actually, if you look at our Instagram post, we phrase it, we have a 174-year history. Which is true, we do, but the business ran for 130 years. And I've always been very open about this. And I think it's something where you look at the industry and it's very easy for companies to pretend they've been running forever. And actually, when you drill down into those timelines, you realize that suddenly nothing happened between the 60s and the 2000s. As a consumer, that annoys me. It feels like the moment someone isn't being fully upfront, you start looking for holes in what they do. Whereas I've always been not, you know, and I hope there will never be a day where the music stops and we've all got to grab a chair. But I've always said, you know, the day someone wants to write an expose about Fears, they'll be very disappointed. You know, in both myself, our story, and how we make our watches today. I think it's a thing of wanting to not be, you know, whiter than white or be, you know, pure and everything. But it is something of saying, actually, I want to ensure that if someone buys a Fears watch, that they know everything that they're getting. There's no marketing rubbish in there. So when we say hand-built in Britain, we're not saying handmade in Britain. We don't make the whole watch in Britain. You know, I'll leave that to Roger Smith. I've been to the Isle of Man, I've seen his workshops, and what he does is phenomenal. And that is truly hand-making watches. But he makes 10 to 12 watches a year. It's such a labour-intensive process. No, we hand-build our watches. We do make some of the components in-house, so things like our watch hands. We make those actually all within the same postcode in Norwich, where the workshops are. We also do a lot of the finishing in-house. When we receive our movements from ETA in Switzerland, we strip them down, we service them, and then when we rebuild them, we again do some finishing. It's not a Affairs movement, it's an ETA movement. You can rest assured it's a high quality movement. But what we do say is, rather than trying to pretend we make everything in the UK, which isn't the case, and also historically Affairs didn't always make all of its cases and movements and parts. It got parts from the best manufacturers across Europe. That's what we do today. We source our cases and dials from Germany, and from actual Germany, not from a PO box based in Germany and then they're shipped in elsewhere. I've visited every single one of our suppliers who makes all the components to our drawings. We don't use off-the-shelf components. And it means that we work with experts. Our case manufacturer makes cases, that's it. The dial manufacturer makes dials, that's it. The Sapphire glass manufacturer, who is our only non-European supplier, they're based in Hong Kong. All they do is make sapphire glasses. For a lot of these suppliers, I'm one of their smallest clients, but I would rather work with people who you can experiment with. When you're talking about making a dial, yes, you could say, okay, well, let's try and make a British watch dial. That's almost impossible. You'd have to make it entirely in-house. And we tried doing that, and the quality was just nowhere near as good. So we go to one of the best dial manufacturers in the world. But rather than going through a third-party manufacturer, we go direct to them. I literally will fly in and spend a day having a meeting with them and then fly out again. It's not great for my carbon footprint, but it does ensure that when you order, say, 50 dials, you receive 50 dials, you can use 50 dials, rather than ordering 500 and knowing you can only use 100. The quality is exceptional, but also the joy of being in a meeting where you're talking to someone and you're both getting excited and very geeky about different types of varnish, different types of lacquer. Should it be 5 layers of white lacquer, or should it be 1 layer of white and 4 layers of clear? It has a completely different surface finish. And actually, when you stop and think, hang on, we've just spent an hour talking about different shades of white lacquer. But for me, that is what running a business that carries my family's name is about. We don't build a watch to a price. We don't set a price and say, right, we want the watch to be this amount, we need this margin, so we need to find, manufacturers who can do it to a cost. We do it the other way around. So the thing I've always wanted to do with Affairs, and what I've always wanted to create, is a watch that it's like watches of old. So without making a vintage watch by design, by style, it's a vintage watch by ethos. Why do people love that watch from the 1940s or 50s? Often it's because that watch was someone's only watch that they treasured for their entire life. We can talk about patina and design, but I think deep down people connect with that idea. Whereas, if you have 50 watches, you may not necessarily connect with one, you connect with all. So what I've always wanted to do with Affairs is, because it has so much hand finishing, hand crafting, so much care and attention into every aspect, it's a precious item. When you hold it in your hand, you know that this isn't been mass produced. This isn't easily replicable. You can't just say, oh, well, don't worry, we can, there's another one in the store. Often we only have a handful of watches in stock at any one moment. And it's that fact of something being precious, something special, but also the design, it always comes down to something being beautifully designed is simple. But to have that simplicity is very complicated. So yes, it's always about having something that is precious and very special. And that's what I want to do with the watches we make today.